Welcome to Business on Top, where women are building empires, becoming breadwinners, and redefining the dynamics of their households without a playbook. I'm Kaeli Lindholm, mom, wife, founder, and leadership advisor to a portfolio of female-owned businesses generating over $100 million in annual revenue. Most business advice was never designed for women leading and building at this level. That's why each week I'll open the vault and share a leadership lesson from real experience, so you can navigate the decisions you're making every day with confidence. If you are a serious female founder and leadership feels messy right now, you're in the right place. We are rewriting the rules for this next era of how women lead and build. This is Business on Top. Let's go. Over the last 10 years, I've had the great opportunity to work alongside hundreds of founders as they've crossed their next $1 million milestone. And over time, I started to recognize a very similar pattern. It's this tug of war between wanting to grow and make impact and then also wanting to hibernate from the exhaustion of it all. And believe me, I am no stranger to this experience. I just put my head down and did my best work every day. And before I knew it, I had become the main talent. I was the marketer, the decision maker, the problem solver, the quality control department, and somehow the operating system holding the entire company together. And from the outside, I think things looked good. Like I looked and felt successful. People would say, Kaeli, you're crushing it. And I was doing good, right? But inside, I had this deeply rooted fear about what all this growth and success would cost me. I never wanted to build a business that made me choose between my work and the lifestyle that I wanted to work toward. And that is, in essence, what the whole point of all of this is. I created this series because I want to talk to you about my experience. And over the next 7 days, I want to tell you about the key to creating operational excellence in your business, the kind of systems that uplift, support, and empower you as a founder. So we'll dive into the nuts and bolts of leadership, accountability. We'll talk about founder dependency and why some businesses continue to scale while others seem to hit the same ceiling over and over again. I want to help you learn a new model of growth that provides so much freedom that your business starts to feel like it's supporting your life instead of consuming it. How does that sound? So whether you're approaching your first $1 million year or leading a much larger organization, my hope is that this series changes the way you think about growth altogether. So let's get into it. Part 1, what is a system anyway? If you've spent any amount of time around business owners, you've probably heard someone say, you need better systems. But nobody ever stops to explain what a system actually is. Most founders assume that when we talk about a system, they're talking about software, like we use Patient Now, or we have Slack, or we use AI. Those aren't systems. Those are tools. A system is simply a repeatable way of achieving a desired outcome. That's it. So think about brushing your teeth. You probably don't even think about it much anymore because you've followed the same sequence thousands of times. Pick up the toothbrush, the toothpaste, brush, rinse. It's predictable. You have your system down. Your business should work the same way. Every consultation should follow a repeatable flow. Every patient should have the same onboarding experience. Every employee should know exactly what happens after someone agrees to a treatment plan. That's what a system is. And here's the thing, every business already has systems. That's right. The question is whether they were intentionally designed or if they're up to date for that matter. If every front desk coordinator answers the phone differently, congratulations, that's your phone system. If every injector explains pricing or outcomes differently, that's your consultation system. If every new employee gets trained differently depending on who's available, that is your onboarding system. So I want to remind you that you do not have no systems, you just have inconsistent ones. One of the biggest transitions founders have to make is realizing that operational excellence isn't about adding more. It's about reducing variability in the business. So when I walk into practices, I can usually tell within a few hours whether a business is systems driven or human dependent. So it often looks like every decision funneling up and back through the boss. And for those of you scaling a business, here's why this is important. If every exception requires the founder or employee to get an approval, if they all have their own way of doing things, then the business isn't scalable yet. A truly operationally excellent business produces consistency regardless of who is working that day. So the patient shouldn't receive a completely different experience because Ashley answered the phone instead of Sarah, or because the owner took a vacation, right? The standard should remain the same. That's what systems protect. So it's not about rules, it's just about having standards. And that's why I believe systems are one of the greatest acts of leadership, because you're creating clarity for your team, consistency for your customers, and really freedom for yourself. So next time, I want to talk about something founders confuse all of the time: the difference between systems, processes, and SOPs, because they're not interchangeable, and understanding the difference between them will make your business stronger and your life so much easier. Okay, I'll see you in the next Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Part 2, your business doesn't need more SOPs. Welcome back to our Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Yesterday, we talked about what a system actually is. If you missed it, here's the short version. A system is simply a repeatable way of producing the same outcome over and over again. Today, I want to clear up another misconception, because I hear this all the time. A founder tells me, "Kaeli, we have SOPs." And my response is usually, "Great, tell me how often your team actually uses them." And the answer I get is most often a blank stare back at me, or a response like, "Well, they should be using them, but who knows if they actually are following through." And that's a conversation for another day. Most businesses don't have an SOP problem. They have a systems problem. Here's what I mean. An SOP, a standard operating procedure, is just a document. It's a set of instructions. It's a recipe. And a system is everything surrounding that document that makes it come to life. Think about baking a cake. The recipe tells you what to do, but the system includes buying the ingredients, organizing the kitchen, setting the oven, measuring correctly, checking the timer, making sure every person who bakes that cake follows the same process of baking, cooling, slicing, and communicating the mouth-watering deliciousness of the cake. The recipe alone doesn't guarantee an outcome. The entire system does. Businesses make this mistake all the time. They spend months training and documenting procedures, maybe even build gorgeous manuals. They upload everything into Google Drive or some fancy software. Then 6 months later, nobody opens it. And it's not because the SOP wasn't great. In fact, I've seen ChatGPT bang out some of the most insanely detailed SOPs. The reason it's useless, though, is because the business never built a system for using it. The best operationally excellent companies I've worked with don't create documentation for the sake of documentation. They create habits. Their systems are their operational Bible. They actually train and coach from the documentation, and then they audit against it regularly, and then they improve it. The document isn't the goal. Consistency is. This is why two businesses can have the exact same SOP binder and produce completely different results. One treats it like a filing cabinet, and the other treats it like the operating manual for the business. If your team only looks at an SOP during onboarding, it's probably not a part of your operating system. It has become a reference library, okay? Operational excellence happens when the way your business operates every day matches the standards you've documented. That's when your systems become reality. As you're looking at your own business this week, here's the question I'd like to encourage you to ask. Do we have documentation, or do we have systems that people actually use? Because those are two very different things. Next session, I want to talk about something I see in almost every growing business, and that is founder dependency. This is a critical roadblock for a scaling company. Not because founders want to be the bottleneck, obviously, but because most of them accidentally built a business that can't make decisions without them. I can tell you, as someone who's been there, this is where operational excellence becomes very personal. Okay, hope you're enjoying this series. If you have questions about systems, SOPs, or operational excellence, ask me in the chat below, and I'll see you in the next video. Part 3, why everyone keeps coming to you. Welcome back to our Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Over the past 2 sessions, we've talked about what systems actually are and why simply creating SOPs isn't enough to build an operationally excellent business. Today, I want to talk about something that I think almost every founder experiences. Maybe this sounds familiar for you. You finally sit down to work on something important, and within 5 minutes, someone knocks on your door. Can I ask you a quick question? And then another. Hey, how would you handle this? And then you get a Slack message, and then a text, and then a Teams notification. And before you know it, you spent the entire day answering questions and responding to urgent issues instead of making game-changing visionary moves for the business. Most founders assume this is just part of leadership. I don't. I believe it's a symptom, and it's a result of an operating system that hasn't matured yet. One of the things I hear founders say all the time is, no matter how much I invest in support, people, training, etc., I feel relief for a while, and then ultimately everything just comes back to me or just simply doesn't get done properly and then needs to be micromanaged later. And the interesting part is that they usually say it with a ton of frustration and yet still never quite get out of that boomerang of delegate, fix, delegate, fix. On one hand, it does feel good to be needed. It makes you feel valuable, but eventually it becomes exhausting because you realize your business can only move at the speed that you're available to answer questions. I know this because I built that business. For years, I thought I was being a great leader because I always had the answer. My team could always just reach me. I was just Johnny on the spot. I had an answer for everything. Was impressed by my ability to control and lead strategic implementation through others. What I didn't realize was that every time I answered a question that should have been answered by a system, I was training my team to come back to me the next time. I wasn't creating independence. I was accidentally creating a habit of dependence. That was a hard lesson for me to learn because it forced me to realize I wasn't just solving today's problem. I was actually reinforcing tomorrow's behavior. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that your team should never ask questions. Of course they should. Leadership isn't about disappearing. It's about making sure the questions they're bringing to you are the ones you should answer. Your team should need you for vision, coaching, and difficult decisions, not because no one knows how to refund a patient or handle a schedule change or respond to some objection, right? That is not leadership. That is missing infrastructure. One exercise I love doing with founders is asking them to keep a running list for a week. Every time someone asks you a question, write it down. Don't answer it differently, just track it. By the end of the week, look at the list. You'll probably notice that the same 10 or 15 questions keep showing up. Those questions are your roadmap. Every recurring question is pointing back to a system that either doesn't exist, isn't documented, isn't being trained on, or isn't being reinforced. So instead of getting frustrated with your team for asking, get curious about why they have to ask, because that's where operational excellence begins. It's easy to blame people. It's much harder and much more productive, to be honest, to slow down and improve the operating system they work inside of. That's one of the biggest mindset changes that I had to make as a founder. When the same problem kept happening, I stopped asking, why can't they figure this out? And I started asking, what about our system made this the most likely outcome? That single question changed the way I led. And honestly, it changed my quality of life too. Because as the systems became stronger, my team became stronger. And I didn't have to hire different people. I needed to build an operating system that finally gave good people the clarity they needed to succeed. Next week, we're going to build on this idea by talking about the handful of systems that matter the most. Because if you're trying to document everything at once, you're never going to finish. So I'd rather show you where to start to optimize your time, energy, and financial resources. And P.S., if you're enjoying this series and has got you wondering where these bottlenecks exist in your own business, I created a customized resource to help. It's called the Ultimate Practice Growth Audit. It's a 45-page strategic assessment that will help you evaluate the exact systems, leadership, financial, and operational opportunities that we've been talking about throughout this series. Download it as your companion guide to this series and use it to build your next 90-day plan. You can grab it in the link below, and I will see you in the next video. Part 4, the 5 systems every million-dollar business needs. Welcome back to our Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Yesterday, we talked about founder dependency and why your team keeps coming back to you with the same questions over and over again. Today, I want to save you from making another mistake I see founders make all the time. They leave a training like feeling motivated and excited. They decided they're finally going to systematize the business and immediately try to document everything. every checklist, every workflow, every tiny task. They bombard their team with all of the things. 3 weeks later, they're overwhelmed. Nothing is finished, and the binder ends up collecting dust. Operational excellence isn't about documenting everything. It's about documenting the things that create the biggest impact. I always tell founders to think of their business like a house. If you're building a home, you don't start by picking the cabinet hardware. You pour the foundation first. Businesses work exactly the same way. There are a handful of systems that almost every growing company needs before worrying about the little details. The first is your sales system. How does someone discover you? How are consultations handled? How are objections handled? How do they become a paying customer? The second is your client experience system. From the moment someone says yes, what happens next? How do they get onboarded? How do you create consistency so every time every customer has the same exceptional experience, regardless of who is working that day? The third is your people system, how you hire, onboard, train, coach, and hold people accountable. The fourth is your financial system, how are decisions made around money, who owns reporting, what KPIs are reviewed, and how often. Because businesses don't become accidentally financially healthy, by the way. They create routines around measuring what matters. For example, we track the ROI on every single course, program, event, masterclass, you name it, in our company. So if our goal is to hold a strong profit margin, these systems are what help protect those goals. And finally, your leadership system. And this one surprises people because they don't think of leadership as a system, but it absolutely is. How are priorities communicated? How are meetings run? How are decisions made? How do problems move through the organization? How often does your leadership team meet? How do goals get reviewed? How is accountability and success measured? Without a leadership operating system, every other system eventually starts drifting. Chaos almost always starts because the core operating system is weak. I talked to you in part 2 of this series about the moments when a founder tells me, Kaeli, we have SOPs, and my response is, great, tell me how often your team uses them. And then I hear back, the blank stare, of course, or, well, they should be using them, but who knows if they actually are following through. This is a prime example of an immature leadership system. If you're listening today, don't leave with a list of 50 SOPs to write. Instead, ask yourself one question. Which of these 5 systems would create the biggest improvement in our business if it became more consistent? Start there. Remember that operational excellence isn't created by doing more as an owner. It's built through discernment, prioritization, and focus on the things that matter most. Next week, I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, accountability. Because accountability isn't actually about making sure people are doing their job. It's about building a business where accountability becomes the natural outcome of a well-designed operating system. And P.S., if you haven't already accessed our free companion guide for this series, comment or DM operating system, and I'll send it to you, or you can grab it in the show notes below. I'll see you in the next video. Part 5, accountability isn't what you think it is. Welcome back to our Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Over the last few sessions, we've talked about systems, SOPs, founder dependency, and the handful of operating systems that every business needs. Today, I want to talk to you about a word that almost every leader uses, but very few define the same way, and that word is accountability. When I ask founders what they want more of in their business, one of the most common answers I hear is, I just need my team to be accountable and to do their job. I can see you nodding. I understand exactly what they mean because I've said those same words. But over the years, my definition of accountability has changed completely. Today, I don't believe accountability starts when someone misses a deadline. I think it starts long before that. Here's what I mean. Imagine asking someone to hit a target they've never actually seen, or asking them to win a game without ever explaining the rules to them. Most of us would agree that that's not fair. Yet that's exactly how a lot of businesses operate. We hire great people, we tell them we trust them, we expect them to take ownership, but then somewhere along the way we forget to define what ownership actually looks like. Then we're surprised when everyone has a different interpretation. One person thinks responding to a patient within 24 hours is acceptable. Someone else thinks it should happen in 15 minutes. Neither person is necessarily trying to underperform. They're operating from a different set of expectations. That's not an accountability problem, that's a clarity problem. One of the biggest leadership lessons learned is that accountability and clarity can never be separated. Before I ask whether someone is accountable, I ask myself these 5 questions. Number 1, did we clearly define the outcome? Number 2, did we explain why it matters? Number 3, did we define who owns it? Number 4, did we establish how success will be measured? And number 5, did we create a system for reviewing progress before something went wrong? Because if the answer to those questions is no, and I mean any of those questions, then I haven't created an environment where accountability has a chance to thrive. I've simply created an opportunity for confusion to happen along the way. Now, that doesn't mean that people aren't responsible for their own performance. Of course they are. Personal responsibility is vital. But as leaders, we also have responsibility to build an operating system that makes success easier to achieve. I remember years ago feeling frustrated that I had to keep following up on the same things. I'd think, why can't people just take ownership? And eventually I realized I was asking people to own outcomes that I never fully operationalized. Some projects didn't have a clear owner. Some expectations lived really only in my head. Some priorities even changed without being properly communicated. And then I found myself frustrated that nobody could just do it, really to read my mind. That realization was very humbling for me because the problem wasn't always the people. Many times it was the operating system that I had built around them or lack thereof. One thing I often tell our clients is that accountability isn't something you enforce once a month during a performance review. It's something your business either creates every single day or quietly erodes every single day. It's built into your meeting routines, your scorecards, your KPIs and KRAs, your communication, your follow-up, your coaching, your documentation, and ultimately your leadership. And the best teams I've worked with don't spend all day wondering whether they're winning. They know, because clarity gives people confidence, and confident people make better decisions. So here's the question I'd encourage you to ask yourself today. Think about one person on your team that you've recently felt frustrated with. Before you ask whether they're being accountable, ask yourself this instead. Have I made it unmistakably clear what success looks like? Have I given them the systems, the tools, and the feedback to consistently achieve that standard? Or am I expecting them to figure it out as they go? Because accountability doesn't begin with holding people responsible. It begins with building a business where responsibility is crystal clear. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about one of the biggest myths in business, the belief that hiring better people will solve operational problems. Because after working with hundreds of growing businesses, I've learned that great people rarely fix broken systems. More often than not, broken systems slowly break great people. I will see you in the next session. And by the way, if you've been following along with this Operational Excellence series, don't forget to download our free companion guide, The Ultimate Strategic Planning Audit. Comment or DM operating system. We'll send it over, or you can grab it in the show notes. Part 6, Broken Systems Break Great People. Welcome back to our Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Yesterday, we talked about accountability and why I don't believe accountability starts with holding people responsible. I believe it starts by creating enough clarity that people actually have the opportunity to succeed. Today, I want to challenge another belief I hear all the time, which is we just need better people. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes the wrong person is sitting in the wrong seat. I've absolutely seen that happen. But if you've ever found yourself replacing the same position over and over again, every front desk coordinator struggles, if every practice manager eventually burns out, if every new hire starts strong but somehow ends up underperforming, at some point we have to stop asking what's wrong with the people and start asking what's happening inside of the business. Because here's what I've learned after helping over 700 female entrepreneurs cross their next $1 million milestone. Broken systems don't just frustrate founders, they frustrate great employees. Imagine showing up to work every day, wanting to do a great job, but priorities change every afternoon. Nobody knows who's responsible for what. Training depends on whoever's available. Every manager gives different directions. Patients receive different experiences depending on who's working. One day you're praised for taking initiative. The next day you're told you should have asked first. Eventually, even your best people stop feeling confident. And that's not because they lack talent, it's because they lack consistency. One of the biggest misconceptions in leadership is believing that high performers don't need systems. I actually think it's the opposite. The higher the performer, the more they appreciate clarity. The best employees don't want to spend their energy guessing, they want to spend it executing. When expectations are clear, ownership becomes second nature because our team members can show up and drive agreed upon initiatives forward. Win-win. People enjoy coming to work because they know what success looks like. That's what operational excellence creates. It doesn't remove accountability, it creates the conditions where accountability can actually exist. I remember years ago thinking I just needed to find people who thought exactly the way I did. I needed my unicorn who could bang out a task list and also deliver a 50% profit margin and bring me coffee and manage 5 other people. And eventually I realized that that wasn't realistic. What I really needed was a business that communicated expectations so clearly that people didn't have to think and act just like me to produce the same standard. And that changed everything because the goal changed from building a team of mind readers to building a business where ordinary people can consistently produce extraordinary experiences because the operating system supported them. Think about companies you've interacted with that deliver an exceptional experience every single time. It's probably not because every employee was groomed in etiquette school. It's because the business has built extraordinary systems. The people matter tremendously, but even the best people eventually become discouraged when they're expected to succeed inside of chaos. One of my favorite quotes is this: the best way to get rid of an A player is to surround them with a team of individuals who are not A players. And that goes for us as leaders too. An A team requires an A leader. So here's the question I want you to think about today. Is there someone on your team whose performance you've been questioning? Maybe you started thinking about them yesterday. Before you assume they're the problem, ask yourself something different. If I hired another person into this exact same role tomorrow, would they inherit the same confusion? If the answer is yes, the person may not be your biggest opportunity. The operating system probably is. And after spending the last 10 years helping founders scale businesses, I've realized something else. Operational excellence actually isn't the finish line. It's the foundation. Because I've worked with businesses that were incredibly well run. They had documented systems, healthy accountability, strong financial performance, and talented leadership teams. So on paper, they looked like everything a founder could want. But the founder was still exhausted. She was still answering messages at night. She felt guilty taking time off. She couldn't fully unplug because somehow the business always found its way back to her. And that's when I realized something that completely changed the way I think about a business. Building a business that is growing isn't enough. It has to support the life we as founders are trying to build too. Because what's the point of creating operational excellence if the business you're building still costs you the moments that matter the most? That's why over the years, our work evolved far beyond systems and SOPs. We started asking a different question, not simply how do we help businesses grow, but how do we help founders build businesses that create more health, more wealth, more impact, and more freedom? And that became the foundation for everything we teach today. In our next session, I'm going to introduce to you the framework that shaped the growth trajectory of every client we've worked with and every business we've helped scale over the last decade. It's called the Life First Business Operating System. Operational excellence was never the destination. It was always meant to create something much bigger. An experience that gives you your life back, is a joy to show up to every day, and provides lucrative cash reserves that allows you to experience asset-driven growth through the creation of your business. If you haven't snagged it yet, be sure to download the 45-page resource I created for you in the show notes, or you can DM Operational Excellence and I'll send it over. And I can't wait to see you in our final session of our Operational Excellence series. See you next time. Part 7. You don't need another strategy, you need an operating system. Welcome back to our Life First Business Operational Excellence series. Over the past several days, we've talked about systems. We've talked about SOPs, founder dependency, accountability, leadership, building teams that don't rely on you for every decision. And if you followed the series from the beginning, I hope something has started to become obvious for you. None of these conversations have actually been about systems. They've been about designing a business that can grow without asking you to sacrifice more of yourself every single year. Because here's what I've learned after a decade of helping hundreds of founders scale. Revenue isn't usually the thing holding the business back. Most practices we work with are very successful. Many of them have experienced what we playfully refer to as success by accident. They put their head down to build a business, and suddenly it feels like the business is building them. The real challenge is really what happens after that kind of growth shows up. Growth exposes every weakness your business has been hiding. The cracks in communication, the leadership gaps, any inconsistencies in the patient experience, financial blind spots, and what we meet is a founder who has become the operating system instead of the CEO who is leading one. And that's why I don't believe businesses fail because their founder isn't as relentless as maybe another one. It's simply that many of them wake up and find that they've outgrown the operating system that their business was built upon. And that's exactly why years ago we stopped teaching isolated business tactics or just regurgitating another EOS framework instead. We built what we now call the Life First Business Operating System. It's a business model that acknowledges the reality of the women that we work with every single day. Women who want to build extraordinary companies without giving up extraordinary lives. They care about profitability and presence, showing up for family dinners, and indulging in health and travel. Business success shouldn't require choosing between those things. It should create more of them. That's what the Life First Business Operating System was designed to do. I'm going to take you deeper into that framework in our upcoming Strategic Planning Masterclass. It's called 90K in 90 Days. Because before you build next year's business, you need a clear plan for the next 90 days, not another notebook full of ideas that you'll never implement. A strategic planning blueprint to help you identify the handful of priorities that will create the biggest impact in your business over the second half of this year. We'll walk through your leadership priorities, your operational mechanisms, your financial KPIs, and really hidden growth opportunities that have just been buried under a never-ending to-do list. And we'll help you build a 90-day execution plan that actually reflects the life you're trying to create, not just the revenue that you're trying to chase. Because I don't believe you need more information. You just need more clarity and a system that actually works in your operating reality of today. If you've enjoyed this series, I genuinely think you'll love what's coming next. I'd love to invite you to join us inside of 90K in 90 days. And after that, I'll begin pulling back the curtain on the complete Life First Business Operating System. Because operational excellence was never the destination. It was simply the foundation for building a business that gives you more freedom, more health, more wealth, and more impact. Comment 90 days for an invitation, or you can grab it, the link in the show notes. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and I can't wait to see you in the masterclass.
If you are listening to this and something in you is stirring, I want you to know this is exactly where the work begins. This is the space between where you've been leading reactively and where you are being asked to lead from a new framework. And the truth is that next level of leadership doesn't come from more information. It comes from putting yourself in rooms and environments that challenge how you think, how you decide, and how you show up inside of your business. That's exactly why we built the Pop Leadership Academy. It's a space for founders who are no longer looking for surface level strategy, but who are ready to evolve how they lead, how they build, and how they scale so the businesses they create can fully support the life they want to live inside of. You can learn more about the Pop Leadership Academy and apply through the link in show notes. And in the meantime, get more inspiration delivered directly to your inbox through my weekly briefing, The Blueprint, at klcleadership.com/blueprint. Until next time, keep leading life first and business on top.